Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you to the UFL team for the warm welcome. As Jeanette said, I'm Sara Chandler. I lead the Equity and Access Program at Elemental Accelerator. We are a nonprofit and we invest in climate technologies for deep community impact. And we believe in order to achieve deep community impact, you have to partner deeply. And what that looks like is really about the how you partner. It's about trying to achieve mutual benefit in your partnerships. And we use a simple framework to do this called the Square Partnership Model. And the meaning behind the model is really to demonstrate that on four sides of a square, you should be working with your community partner, you should be working with a climate technology company, a customer, and a funder. And all four sides of this square should be shoulder to shoulder, trying to achieve mutual benefit and deep community impact. And so I'm really thrilled to be on stage with Schubert and Adam because they have a very fascinating and fun partnership, which definitely feels like family, just to use another F word, and and it's been amazing, a good one. It's been amazing. I'm from California, just to be able to come in and learn more about this relationship and about how they went about partnering. I'm really excited to share more of their story with you all. So I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your company or your organization, and a little bit about your mission, vision, and values. And I'm going to start with Adam.
Good morning, everybody.
You can.
So my name is Adam Cohen, middle one. So my title is the co-founder and chief technology officer of 9-Energy. PhD after my name. So we have a lot of branding and sort of fancy things going on. So I wanted to kind of break that down a little bit. So 9-Energy, we're a clean energy developer based in Brooklyn, actually at the Urban Future Lab. We develop projects all throughout New York City. We have a fair number of our team here who you can chat with at the coffee breaks. We work often with Con Edison right across the street as their headquarters, and we see some friends from Con Edison. So I want to talk about our name, 9-Energy. So we have a silly name squished together, the number 9 and dot. So it's all about a game. So there's a little game that you can give to fourth graders. You make 9 dots on a piece of paper, 3x3 grid. And you tell them, here's a pencil with an eraser. Try to connect all the dots without picking the pencil up off the piece of paper with 4 or fewer lines. And so you start drawing and you try to connect the dots, and you play a game. Maybe there's lots of different dots on, so you can try it again and again. It turns out it's not that easy. In order to solve the puzzle, the challenge, there's lots of different ways to solve it. One way is you actually leave the 3x3 square, and you come back in, and then you can connect them with four lines. And so it's this sort of seemingly simple set of constraints, but all the rules of the game weren't told to you. They weren't told you couldn't leave that 3x3 grid. It was just to connect the lines. I mean, there's other ways you can solve it. You can kind of take your piece of paper and make it into a loop and then make one line, just keep going around. Or if you have a really big pencil, you can go around the entire world and come back, right? And so it's like the whole point of 9-Energy and this name and what we do is to find clever ways to find solutions that work that weren't obvious at the outset. And so when we think about the clean energy projects that we build all throughout New York City, the way that we partner with organizations, the way we build our team, well, we're looking for this sort of cleverness, this way to connect and build a community, to put things together that all the pieces were there, but were kind of not put together in a certain way. So I guess when I think about partnership, I gave my title, co-founder, CTO, PhD, but that's kind of my title, and that's our company, but I'm also a father and a husband and a son and a friend and a Jew and this. And when you come to partnerships, you don't bring your title. You bring sort of all of you, and that's part of what connection is. It's not just one part of one dot of who you are. It's putting that all together. And so when I think about, we'll tell our story, but when I think about what we've done with the Bronx School for Better Learning over the last 2 years now, it's about taking this, like building these connections, building this partnership, but bringing more than just your title or who you are to it. So I think maybe I'll have more opportunity to describe what our company actually does later, but
Thank
give
you,
that as an
Adam.
intro.
So you bring all of that to it, and we consider BBL as a 10th dot. So we're messing up their dottedness. So I'm Stuart Jacobs, Executive Director at the Bronx Charter Schools for Better Learning, a school which started approximately 20 years ago. At that time, I was the founding principal. We started with 50 students, and we had maybe about 8 employees. And we have grown now to 2 schools with approximately 1,000 students. We are in the Northeast Bronx. We have 200 employees. What's special about BBL? Our approach to education is that we start with an awareness that kids are gifted. Not because you tested them and you found that out. They're gifted because they were born that way. All of us here as babes, we talked, we walked, we crawled, we did all those things. Guess what? Nobody taught us that. If babes can do that, then it means that every child has greatness in him. And as we approach them in the classroom, we don't tell them the answers. We help them to figure out things for themselves. Yes, we do plan. As a teacher, you have to have a lesson plan. You know exactly where you're going, but it's not the plan that determines where you go. It's the needs of the students. So we mold to the needs of the students, and we believe strongly in collaboration. And it is that particular core value that causes us, for example, to be thinking of 9-Dot, as a partner, community partner, as we collaborate. So that's a little about our school. I have 2 members of staff sitting over there. I'll tell you about one of them in a little while, but as I said, we are what, 197 is at home. 3 of us are actually here today.
Thank you both. I'm really, really grateful to be able to facilitate this conversation because each of these organizations were so firmly kind of rooted in their own values first, and were open and ready to partner, knowing that they could demonstrate their values through partnership. And I think that's a really important point that I'm excited to get into a little bit more. So let's start with, can you all hear me? Is it kind of going in and out? Maybe I'll hold it closer. Okay, I haven't been on stage in a while, y'all. Patience with me, thank you. I'd love for us to start with the phone call that made this partnership happen. These are both very esteemed, accomplished people, but there was no plan, you'll learn. And so I would love for Adam to share a little bit more about the phone call that started this relationship, what you were doing in the community, a little bit more about your project that jump-started this project.
Sure. So as a company, our job is to make the power grid more resilient, more reliable, more affordable, and cleaner. And so we do that by building clean energy projects in the parts of the power grid that are the most stressed or the dirtiest or the most expensive. And so we have projects in 4 of the 5 boroughs. We still can't make anything pencil in Manhattan. And we work often with our friends at Con Edison to help identify the sort of general areas where projects with solar or fuel cells or battery energy storage can provide the most community benefits to make that power grid better, I guess we'll say stronger. And so we're many companies in one. We're a real estate company to go find pieces of land. We're a finance company. We're a construction company. We're an operations company. And so we're a team of about 55 people or so, still based at the Urban Future Lab, where we started with 1 desk that my co-founder and I shared back in 2018. And in about 2019, we were, to go back 5 years, we identified that the Northeast Bronx, so one of the substations that Con Edison has there, the Parkchester No. 2 substation, they call it, was one of the highest needed areas in New York City. And so you can get on get Union Square, get on, I guess, the RW train, change to probably the 5 train, go up. We can all go up later take the 5 train up to the Northeast Bronx. And you get off, and you want to find a piece of land where you can build a project that makes the power grid more reliable. And so that's what we do. And so back in summer 2019, winter of 2019, we started going up and down Gun Hill Road and Boston Road looking for a place to build a project. That was what we were doing. And we found a piece of vacant land that happened to be across the street from a school. It wasn't part of the plan. It was next to a shopping center. It was a perfect piece of land with the feeder lines going north and south up Gunther Avenue. And that was why we found this piece of land. It turns out it wasn't for rent. It wasn't for sale. We found the owner who collects Belgian blocks from the city and then resells them. That's their job. And they were using that land for, 50 years to store materials and construction equipment there. And we told the story of what we wanted to do to help the power grid. And he said, we can move our Belgian blocks somewhere else. And the Piaquadio family said, you can rent this piece of land. And so we ended up signing a lease in March of 2020. It all moved from meeting at the Dunkin' Donuts to doing this all by Zoom or by telephone. And so it takes a long time to actually not build a project, but to check all the boxes to make sure it actually works. You have to do studies with the utility company. You have to do your zoning analysis with the city. You have to get your permits. You have to buy the equipment. You have to finance it. And so it takes a while to actually get from sort of this idea to actually building something. We started and this was all when we were a very small company, 2 or 3 of us. We actually got our first major investments in the winter of 2022, and we started breaking ground on that piece of land in, I think, the fall or March of 2022. And they're still a small company, and so Department of Buildings gives you your fence to say what you're building, when it's going to be operational, and who to contact, a little telephone number. And so, we're a small company. It had my cell phone number on the wall, on outside. And so, in I guess May and June, 2 years ago, 2022, we were causing a little bit of a ruckus. We had some equipment picking things up, moving it around, some beeping. And so I ended up, I got a call ended up being a board member of your school, so Marilyn May. And she wanted to know what we were doing there. And I had gotten calls for other projects before on my cell phone. I recall a project that we were building in Staten Island. I got a call, and it was about, every time I walk by this piece of land, I get a headache. And I'm like, we haven't done anything yet. It just has a sign up. And so I was expecting a call like that. But then it was a call about, what are you doing here and why you're disrupting Gunther Avenue? We're going to have our graduation, or we just had our graduation for the students at BBL. And so I started explaining what we were doing, and I told the story of who we are, who I am, why we're building this project, why we're on Gunther Avenue in the first place. And on that call, it was that we weren't causing a ruckus in the community. Yes, for a few months we might be having some construction equipment coming in and out, and it might be harder for the teachers to park on a few spots on the street because we have a construction fence up. But the idea that we're building something in the community that helps the broader community have a stronger power grid to make New York City cleaner. We're investing in the community. There's sort of a science, technology, engineering, and math component. There's a community development component. It all came up on that telephone call. I don't know, maybe we talked for a half an hour. And so we on this call, which was going to be about why we're moving the cobblestones and bringing in some construction equipment, we had this idea that there's more than just a project being built here. There's an opportunity to make this part of the community, to be an educational part of for the students. And so Ms. May put us in touch. That was what we started with. We started with, there's an idea here, which is kind of, I want to go back. This is what kind of entrepreneurship is. It's sort of an idea and then an opportunity. You put those two things together, and hopefully you can actually do something. And so that was the telephone call that we had probably about 2 years ago, which led to sort of the project being not just a project that helps the power grid, but is broader part of that community and working with students. And I think we'll talk more about that, but that's some history, I guess. Well.
Yeah, that context is extremely important because I think everything that Adam's saying sounds so great, the possibility of enriching students, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about all the good and the the impact that came from saying yes. But not everyone is open to a climate, clean tech, energy startup, working with their students and coming in. And BBL was. They said yes. And it was an intentional choice because of their values. And I'd love for Schubert, before we get into talking more about what ended up happening, just tell us a little bit about what you think would have made you say no to this type of partnership and to the ruckus happening across the street. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, if Adam decided not to wear our shirt, we would have said no. But I think it started, as you heard about that phone call, have somebody to pick up the phone. And that makes a difference. I think it started there because in picking up that phone, we got an idea that it is not so much what we're hearing on the outside of our schools, it's the purpose behind it. And I think that was what started. Now, if anyone knows Adam, he fits right into an elementary school very well. He's a kid at heart. He kind of won our hearts by telling us a tomato story, and maybe he'll tell that story, at some point. But the kind of investor that he is and his company, they don't come to you and then they leave you. The proximity is important. They started working with these kids, staying there with the kids, talking to them, getting to know their families. And that made a difference because when you're building, it's not just about the structure that you're putting in place, it's the relationships. Because if you are going to be building for the future, you must develop relationships. You can't just leave people by themselves hanging. And that's part of what made the difference, why it was never a no. And at this stage, if 9 Dot were to say, I want to go to BBL, we would not ask why, we would ask when. And what Adam did, and Adam showed us, was not just Adam himself. It's a culture of 9 Dot. I think every single staff member at 9 Dot has come to BBL at some point, whether working with the kids during the week or at some points on Saturdays, getting those mural painted and, getting their hands dirty. And we could not say no when we see someone like that who is interested in partnering with us and being there with us and building a family. So that's why it was never no.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it sounds like if it had been more of a transactional relationship where you're coming in and it's clear that they know what they're trying to get done before they even start the conversation, that can make it harder to partner. But when you take a relational approach and you really embody the commitment to the community, that makes a total difference in what you're able to achieve. And let's talk a little bit more about that. What do you think was already established at each of your organizations that made you say yes or made you ready, kind of in a position to partner? Because you have to have a certain level of capacity and openness and potentially also structures or programs in place that you can build on top of. So Schubert, do you want to start us off with this one? What was already in place at BBL that allowed you to say yes?
There are a couple of things. We're on the verge of starting an enrichment program with STEM-infused enrichment program. So that created the avenue, created the space, because that's part of what 9 Dot was interested in engaging our students. So that made a difference. It made a difference as well that the board member got on board, at the beginning. And when it starts from the top, a lot of times it does trickle down. And we saw the vision, and we also wanted to do something different. And we have always tried to do something different for our staff. So our enrichment program didn't have outsiders. because one of our core values is empowerment. I talked about collaboration before. We saw our enrichment program as an opportunity to grow our staff. So the talents that we use in the enrichment program were primarily out of the staff members. Those who could do culinary arts, soccer, tennis, all those things that they did. And so we had that already in place. And that made a difference in welcoming 9 into the space. We also were doing work at our first campus, which is BBL1, where we work with 9 is at BBL2. So we actually started there with a mural, and that mural that we did came out of a collaboration we had by online. We collaborated with a school in Jamaica, and out of that, we started this whole thing about reuse and recycle. And if you go to BBL1, you'll see that there. So those things were already in place. So we knew what we had already done, and so it was a kind of a no-brainer. And those are some of the things. I'll talk about a person later that made a big difference in this.
So I guess I'd say we went into this, I call it relationship, without knowing what the outcome would be. I think that's a big part of it, having the room in an organization to try things out and to explore and to learn and to do and to have the opportunity to fail also. Sometimes you go down an avenue and it didn't work, or you didn't have a plan at all. You kind of meander. That's kind of the 9 way, I guess. And so a lot of the things we do, I do want to mention, like we partner quite a bit. When you're in clean energy, you can't do anything alone. So we work with the city of New York to create partnerships and kind of set the rules of the road. We work with Con Edison. We are a member of the Urban Future Lab, where we've been since 2018. Actually, with an idea that we had to try to do something different with electric vehicles, we have a partnership with the IN2 Incubator and NREL. We had a project in Red Hook, Brooklyn, where it's the only operating project in New York City where you take the power out of a car, an electric vehicle, and put it back to the grid when the power grid might need extra support. So sort of partnership is sort of core to what we do because you can't do anything alone. And so we always have that mentality when you're meeting somebody, whether it's the school across the street or an investor or a technology company or a new employee. Where are we going to go from here? We don't know at the outset. You kind of explore and you learn along the way. So I think that's the mentality that we try to have at 9. And so starting with that core, explore, innovate, try things out. I think that's where the sort of the ground floor is. So when I got the call, just like in any relationship, where can this go? What can we do? What can be fun? Fun is an important part of it too. All right, you started with 9. It's a game, right? It's a puzzle. It's a thing to play with. And so I think that's a really important piece. I guess in 2022, when we first started this, we were really first building our team up. Right? I think we started the year of 2022 with David and me and maybe we like to say 3 others, but it was 2 other half-time and an intern. Right? That was the company. And so now we have a team of about 55, and we have a number of our members of our team here who have been, stellar members of our team and stellar members of this partnership. And so as we built the team up, it was sort of this relationship was core to kind of embodying the type of company we wanted to build. Like we were still building the company. We were setting our values. We didn't have a set up plan. We didn't have our values and mission statement done. Right now we do, because we have a great head of people who helps us think through these things and make sure we write them down and we live our values. But we were still building. We're still building. We will always be building and innovating. But the idea that this sort of partnership happened at a special time for our company. And so I think that's kind of how this has blossomed and grown. So I think Hubert had more structure than we did. I'm sure still does every single day of the week.
But I think that's really important, because you were able to, replicate something that you had already begun. Schubert, you had a program that you really wanted to continue to develop. And Adam, you had an opportunity, even though you didn't have a plan, but you saw an opportunity to start to build your team culture and create a model for that culture. And so I think it'd be really great to share with the audience a little bit more tangibly, what did the collaboration look like? What team did it require? Who were some of the champions on your teams that made this project happen? What did the work look like?
It is said there's no I in team, but that's not quite true, because sometimes it takes one person. And it is one person sometimes that really lights that fire. And I want to give a shout out to that one person, BBL, and she's sitting right over there, Carleen Buckle. Just give a wave.
You can snap, we can give her a clap.
Because she really is the glue, and what we're talking about here, she'll say we're telling our story. But I would say, and I'm sure Adam will agree with me, that we're really telling her story. She's the person behind the BBL1 mural. She was the person behind the collaboration I talked about with a school in Jamaica. Because as you know, during COVID, everything was virtual. And interestingly, we had a whale of a time during that time, because what we're seeking to do in that space was to have that infusion, that collaboration in terms of what happens in our social studies, science, and ELA space. And we joined with that school, and out of that, we actually came up with the mural. But Carleen was the one behind it, because she was an unusual teacher. She was teaching ELA at the time. But because of her experience and in art, she is a true, what I would say, combination between art, activism, and collaboration. And so it was like a no-brainer that Caroline actually came out of the core classroom work to actually be in charge of the enrichment program. And she has successfully led it for the past 2 years. And if it wasn't for her, then we wouldn't be where we are just now. And it is not just the engagement from the standpoint of what she has done. It's the engagement with the parents. It's the engagement with the students. Because for one of the few times when you actually get parents involved, we had parents, and when I say one of the few times, not so much because we don't do it a lot, but this one stood out differently, because the parents were saying, this is what school should be like. We want more of this. We want this kind of engagement, because they were working with the community. They were working with their kids. And later on, we'll talk some more about the impact on the homes as the kids walked away from this experience and how they sought to actually implement some of those things in their homes. So I think the person and part of what was done in the collaboration with the community made a very big difference.
Absolutely. I think, Adam, it'd be amazing to hear what you did that got everyone so excited and that had such an impact.
So we started, I said, without really a plan and an evolution. I think there was a plan all along. we all work for Miss Buckle, Carleen here. And so there was an evolution here. And in the winter of 2022, before when you were still dreaming up what the STEM plus enrichment program would be, Carleen goaded me into coming on the first day on January 13th of last year. What are we going to talk about? What is the content going to be? How is 9GOT going to tell a story to the students? And I spent a lot of time thinking about how to tell our story. And so on that first day, I think it was a Monday or Tuesday afternoon, I drove up, and I get nervous before I got on stage. And I also got nervous before talking to a group of 4th and 5th graders about what is our story, what is the lesson plan. And so I wanted to tell the story about clean energy and sort of distribution systems, how energy gets from a power plant, goes through a bunch of transmission systems, distribution systems, gets to your plug, and you turn on your air conditioner or your heater, or your device. And so, I like to, think about who is the student, what is the audience. And so I ended up giving a lesson about not electricity. I did it all in terms of metaphors. I talked about how a tomato goes from the farm to your fork and then maybe to your mouth or maybe the compost or garbage bin. And so I talked about the winter tomato. If you're in January and you buy a tomato in New York City, you're likely buying, I'm going to call it a winter tomato. It looks like a tomato, it's red, it looks plump, it looks juicy. But that tomato was probably picked the summer before. It was stuck in a refrigerated warehouse. It was picked before it was ripe, so it was nice and hard so it could be transported. And then a week before it got to the supermarket, that warehouse was pumped with ethylene gas. The tomato knows to turn red, but it doesn't know to ripen. And so you're getting a unripe green tomato that happens to be red. And so the tomatoes that you get in January aren't very good. And so I use that as a metaphor, this distribution system. We're deciding what's easiest to get to the supermarket and to your home to make it look nice, to do what you want to do with it, without thinking about the whole process. And so I use this as a metaphor for fossil fuels and how we could have clean energy. And so I gave this lesson probably an hour-long lesson, and we brought tomatoes in, with different types of tomatoes, we cut them. I think it was a fun lesson. I don't know if the tomatoes were a hit. And so it wasn't like a multi-year plan or engagement when I gave a lesson about tomatoes. I think I'm known as the tomato storyteller at BBL. But I think that so Ms. Carlene kept asking us how we can contribute, what we can do. And so that sort of time at the school, it's what led to more and more engagement. And at some point, you have to turn that into structure and have people who are able to take a sort of idea and turn it into something with a plan, and having people come up. We've ended up being Fridays and Saturdays and sometimes Mondays coming to the school and working on this, which we'll tell what we actually did, I think, at some point. But so we were building this team and having people who wanted to be engaged and be part of it. And so I wanted to call out Mac, who's sitting next to Ms. Buckle, as sort of our director here. They keep the things going. They directed this whole process. And so if we had somebody internally to 9DOT who made sure that people were coming up excited, knowing what we were doing, why we were doing it, what the outcomes could or could not be, having somebody in your team who's able to sort of have that vision and interact with inside and outside of the company, I think is an important sort of ingredient for success. And so whether we're talking about just this collaboration or lots of other things we do at 9DOT, Mac is an important member of the team. And I think that's probably true for Ms. Carlene. Ms. Carlene does lots of other things besides this collaboration as well. And so I don't know if I answered your question at all.
You got there. No, I think the question wasn't about a tomato, but it is,
It was more about a tomato.
A tomato. It's about the how, right? A lot of what this partnership is demonstrating is the mindset of the individuals involved and the openness to taking on a new relationship and the risk and the potential challenges that come with that, because I'm sure there were some. And I love the emphasis on the champions on each of your teams who had visions or structure and really wanted to see the project through with that commitment. What I'm hearing from each of you is this deeply collaborative and open nature across your teams. And you had a program in place. You were thinking about sustainability already at BBL. You were thinking about partnerships already at 9DOT. But it was the kind of openness to seeing what could happen when you begin a relationship, to see what could unfold. And that's why I really wanted to make sure that we spent a lot of time talking about the how and the people and the values that could make the equitable outcomes actually come to life. So we're going to kind of shift gears in the conversation and talk a little bit more about the impact. We've been kind of alluding to what happened when these two unlikely partners came together, and we have some images up behind us, but we're going to talk a little bit about a mural, which is not a common impact from an energy project, but is what happened here. So I'd love for us just to spend a little bit of time and talk about the impact of your partnership in this relationship on BBL and on 9DOT, and then we'll get into a little bit more of what the you feel like the longer term impacts are too in your relationship.
When I look at the mural, I see a combination between enrichment and education. I also think about legacy. Because here it is that you have a space in which kids are engaged. And a lot of times we think about just the academics that kids are involved in. But for us, we think of the whole child. So this is really their doing. This is really what has come out of them. The greatness that I spoke about before, that is actually in them. And all we are facilitators to actually bring that out and actually have it on canvas. I think of legacy because this will last forever. Because somewhere along the line, a child somewhere becoming an adult, will look back and say, you know what? I contributed to something. And for us, with that legacy, the only thing that I think are one of the few things that are real are the things that we actually left behind. So as we are engaging, what are we leaving behind for those who follow us? And you don't plant a tree today to get it tomorrow. You have to plant it from yesterday. So what the kids are actually doing is investing in their future. So even now, they are doing something that they will leave for their kids and their grandkids that will actually follow them. Because every time you pass and you look, somebody says, oh, what is that? What is over there? It also provides an opportunity to go beyond the barriers, to go beyond the wall. Because you see this fence, you see this thing, and then you start looking over what's happening there. So it actually takes you further than what is right there in front of your eyes. So I think it's a learning experience, something that will continue, and something that will tell a different story about the Bronx and about the Northeast Bronx. Because when we think of the Bronx, to a great extent, we think a lot about pollution and so on. And I think looking beyond that and seeing what this is seeking to transform will also give us hope that what we are trying to do is to clean up our environment so that those who are coming after us will have longevity and they won't die a slow death because we're not taking care of our environment.
So I like to think of the mural as one part of this journey. It wasn't the outcome, and it's not just the impact, right? There's more to do. We're going to continue collaborating, and the impact was the sort of the creativity and the learning that went on during the process. This was one milestone in the process. So I just want to talk a little bit about we have a little picture of the mural here. So behind the fence it would have been a green fence. You see a solar panel array. There's some batteries back there. It's one of the first what we call community batteries in New York City. And it was just, we decided that the fence was a canvas. And so we worked with a local artist, TJ Mohammed, who also worked with the mural on BBL1, and a nonprofit group called Art Bridge, works on art projects on fencing and construction projects all throughout New York City. They helped with the permitting and the process. And the story, which ended up being a 135-foot mural, this is one section of it, was the story from the children's perspective of what we're doing behind the fence. And if you look on the leftmost panel, it starts with a student painting the future. The idea of what the Bronx and the New York City and the New York and the world that we want is starting with an idea. It's starting not with science, not with technology, but with art, with creativity, with creation. And that starts with a story. And so it's this panel going from an idea to the students painting that idea. It actually has one panel with individual canvases that each of the students did at the beginning of the process, and then the story of how batteries might work in New York City. So the next one is actually a picture of bringing clean energy from outside New York City with wind and water and solar. It's kind of on a train car coming into New York City. And then the last panel, I don't think we have here, is a picture of a park in the Bronx, the local park with clean air and a clean environment. And the students decided that was the story they wanted to tell after we got to tell our story. It's not our story. This is their neighborhood. This is all our community. And so that's one outcome. But it was this process, and so these are pictures from I think it's the ribbon cutting ceremony, or the reveal that we had I guess last October. And so we had students and I guess we should talk about the process of how that worked also. But we had all the students and their parents and our team and our families come out to reveal what we had all worked on. And if you can see behind, that's what had the whole story. It was probably the rainiest day of 2023 that day. And I had a 5-week-old that we brought up. It was her second time getting in the car to come to this event. And we were all part of the family. Everybody knew my son, who was part of this as well. And everybody knew my wife, Rebecca, was pregnant and sort of coming to these events. So it was kind of part of the family. So it was like our baby naming ceremony at this event. So here we have pictures of me and Schubert, who are the least important people, and sort of an array of all the photos of what we did for many months working together. And just one part of it always reminds me of the student. They had a choir sing, and they were singing on the rainiest day of 2023. It's going to be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. And the idea, I don't know, it's just so touching, this idea that it's not just what's happening today. It's sort of this outlook of what we can create together tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, I don't remember what the question was. I'm just rattling a story.
You're telling us about the impact.
Oh, okay. I think this impact it's just built, I think, you could talk about a plan and a structure. The impact was this community that we built together and how we can keep sort of bringing more and more people into it.
Yeah, I think I'll just add to that too. When we were preparing, Carlene said something that I thought was really powerful too, is the students weren't just engaging in workshops with 9DOT, they were family building. And they would say that, we're family building, we're building a relationship. So there was a lot of carrying forward, not just the outcome, as we're saying, not just the mural, but the process of doing that and what that means for your enrichment and learning. And that's something that they can carry on with them, is the relationship building. And what it looks like to be adaptive and resilient to change and to the rain, coming out in the rain. But I think what is also really cool, I think that is underlying what you're both saying, and I'd love to pass it back to you, Schubert, for this part, is the impact on the larger community and the changes you saw in the excitement that people had around clean energy. Maybe it was the tomato story that really, got them across the finish line to become clean energy champions. But I think it was how you made them feel. It was how the company showed up and the way that you all really valued their resiliency and relationship building. So can you tell us a little bit about the impact on the community and the families and things that you saw?
It's one of those stories that we can really tell about how a community comes together without what Adam talked about, without a plan. Because this was not put on paper, but it's just something that just came about. It's like what you consider a relationship. You say some relationships are just made in heaven, something of that nature. But it has brought us together in a different way, starting, as I mentioned, with the board, getting engaged. We had the students making presentations to the board of trustees that gave them greater insight into who the kids were. We had kids inviting their parents out. The parents are coming. They're talking about renewable energy. They're talking about clean energy. They're talking about transforming their homes, in different ways. Staff members talking about electric cars, and so a number of things have taken place. And even the current students now who are in fourth grade, they're asking, okay, when will we get an opportunity? They're just waiting for the new semester to begin so that they can actually get engaged in that process. We actually saved the landfill from a couple hundreds of bottles, bottle caps, because they have been collecting these bottle caps for phase 2 with the project over there, because there are some barriers around. These construction barriers that you have. I mean, some of them, right? You can see them right there. Ugly looking things. And what they will be doing is using these bottle caps to actually decorate those barriers. So that's another part of the program, the impact. And I think the impact is one that will last, as I mentioned before, because it is not only there are 3 schools in the building where we are. We are the elementary school, and there are 2 middle schools that are there. And it has also there's been some spill off. And I'm sure that one of the things that we will be doing as we move forward is getting engaged, possibly with one of the campuses there to actually do something. So it's influencing in different ways. And we are thinking as well of expanding our enrichment program. So those are some of the things, or some of the ways in which this whole collaboration has impacted BBL. And over to 9 Dot.
I think that you can't really explain what you're doing and why you're doing it unless you can explain it to a 3rd grader, right? And so what we do seems pretty complicated. You have batteries, you have equipment, you have switch gear, you have tariffs and charging and discharging, operations, peaker plans. Uh-oh, something just happened. And so when I think about my team, being able to sort of take what we do and take the essence of it and walk into a school with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, if you can explain why we exist as a company, what it is our mission is, then you've learned something. You can now tell anybody what it is, what we're doing. And so I think that's a huge part of why that might be transactional, that we get a lot out of this relationship by having our team members come in and being able to, they learn about what we actually do. So that's something that's a reason to continue. If you were talking to your investors and why you do things like this, it might be helpful to say that. I think of 9 Dot, maybe I don't think any investors in the room, so it's okay. I mean, we're about 50 people. We're like 2 elementary school classes, all right? About maybe two and a half. And I like to think of us, we're really, actually, I got a lot of questions from the students. What is 9 Dot? What do we do? I like to say we're a group of people who came together to do something together. Maybe we have investors, maybe we have this, maybe we're supposed to make some money at some point, I don't know. But I like to think of us as a group to learn. We're 2 or 3 classes whose job it is to do something together, to learn, to contribute, and to learn, do something for the community, and also learn internally and sort of grow as people. And so I think that's a core part of who we are, and that's why these kind of collaborations keep occurring. So I think that is a huge impact internally to what 9 Dot is and why we exist. I also don't think I answered any of your question.
Yeah, and I just want to say, it is key what Adam just said, because that's one of the things that actually binds us. We don't see ourselves in our school as teachers and learners. Because when you see teachers and students, the impression that is given is that I carry all the knowledge and we have the empty vessels down there, and what I'm doing is pouring into them. So we see ourselves as a community of learners. So and that's part of what links us, because we have the common values, even though we maybe have never really talked about them, to say this is what we have in common, let's just. But as we relate with each other, then you actually live in it. Yes.
Yeah, Absolutely. I'd love for the crowd to really take away the fact that this partnership was extremely fluid, and it was really fundamental that they had shared values and mindsets. And I think it's exciting to know that the impact wasn't just on the community, environment, but it was on each of your students, it was on your team, it was on your board, it was on the parents. It had multiplicative impacts. And I think just to close, when we think about the next steps from your relationship and from this partnership, you shared that you're continuing to work together and you're continuing this project in a new phase through a new mosaic mural. And I think that is just so symbolic of the way that what this relationship has created, a huge mosaic of benefits and impact on each other and on the community. And so it's very fitting of a next step, and really appreciate you both for sharing your experience working together and helping to model what it looks like to really practice mutual benefit and being kind of deeply committed to your mission. So help me just thank our wonderful speakers for sharing their lessons. And thank you, UFL.
Oh, there's just one quick thing. Quick thing. I must tell you this. Part of what came out of this with the kids is a rap. And if you go on the 9 Dot website, you'll see parts of it. We got to act now. Time is running out. We got to make a difference. There's no doubt. Clean energy habits. Let's spread the word. I am no rapper, so I'll stay with my day job. But that's a part of what the kids actually put on paper.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you again to our speakers, Adam and Schubert, and our facilitator or moderator, Sarah. Thank you, guys.